All right, good evening. This is the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union School Board meeting for Wednesday, January 22nd. I do believe we are live tonight. We have on our agenda an executive session for a contract agreement and personnel employment contract matters. Before anybody jumps to go into executive session, I did want to say that we lost a fabulous teacher over the weekend, and Gail Harwood had spent many years working in this district. I can say that she had my children at Molly, and I know Gail worked with her, or Cindy worked with her. A number of people worked with her in different capacities, even around this table, and she will be sorely missed. She put up a really good fight for actually quite a while, and she did make it on her travels. The family went to Hawaii and back, and Gail and Jim went on to New Zealand and Australia. So she did do her traveling, and I'm sure she will be missed. So just wanted to recognize her spirit and her commitment to our district over the years. Thank you. Sure. We do have a couple of executive sessions. We'll have different employees, administrators in for different parts of this, and I promise we'll be back at 7:30, and then if we need to continue, we'll continue. We do have an updated consent agenda, and I will be, where's Richard? He's coming at 7:30.
He's probably not coming till 7:30 because of the...
He read what it said. I would like to put the update on the superintendent search into executive session. It probably will be after, so I'll try and make sure that we get done before or by 8:30-ish, so that I can hold to my adjourn by 9. So, can I entertain a motion to go into executive session?
So moved. Second.
And I will make sure that Richard notes that it's for a contract agreement and for personnel employment matters. We will be going to the conference room. Okay? So we'd like...
They've already approved all the proportional assessments, which is everything except these two.
All right. Good evening again. While it may seem like only a few minutes, we've actually been gone for 40 minutes. And I'd like to call the meeting back to order. I notice we have some handouts in front of us. Richard, our recorder, there's a new amended consent agenda coming around or given to you. And before I get to public comments, I would like to introduce our new HR director. Welcome, Joy Cox. We introduced her in executive session, but I am thrilled to have her. We're all thrilled to have our HR director. Also tonight we have Wendy here, Wendy Pierce and Karen Burnell for our SU meeting. Rick, Tim is not coming tonight? Holbrook? Okay. And then we have a few parents or citizens in the audience. So we'll move to public comments. Do we have public comments?
Hi there. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. I know that recently the sample policy was given to the policy committee for looking at how to draft policy on the board's communication with the community. And I was wondering if it was appropriate or if other representations of the policy would be also provided, because I feel that that one's probably one of the more restrictive policies I've seen, and I just didn't know if other samples were going to be provided or if that was just or if that was okay to do. The other issue I wanted to mention was the documentation. I have brought this up to you before, Shelly, and hopefully getting documentation prior to the meeting, as opposed to being distributed at the meeting, and then, of course, loaded to the web so that if you didn't get a copy, you could go and review it. I'm not sure if there's a timeline on it or not, and I think that it would be very helpful because they have difficulty tracking down documents sometimes to go and see where I could get them because they're not always loaded to it. So I wasn't sure about that, and I don't know if it's a system thing or if it's something that, who handles that? I'm sorry, I don't know. And the third thing being is that we are going into transitional time for students, and I'm concerned about this budget coming up because of the transition needs for families. And I wanted to just voice my concern about getting this budget passed on the first strike, and anything that we can do to expedite that process as SVSU as a whole would be very helpful.
So your first concern can go to the policy committee because we have not, as an SU board, seen it. The second is a matter of timing. You know, we have 7 boards in this district, and things are brought to us at the last minute. My personal style in setting agendas and running meetings is I don't like the agenda changed, but I am fine with, if, like, we have 2 last-minute resignations, and I would hate for these 2 employees who are going to be starting new jobs or moving not to have their resignation when we knew we had a meeting in 2 days. So I think, you know, people use professional judgment, Lori, in how things are presented, and I think everybody tries their very hardest. I know both at Donna at MAU and Catherine here have a, you know, they make themselves notes, they go back. I often call Mary Lee and say, please make sure that, like I did this last week, I said, please make sure Stitzel and Page's contract, both the previous one and the proposed one, was up. The job description for the foreman is actually, you'll note, is going to be pulled, so it's not there. So really, there's reasons for all these things, and if you call central office, I'm sure somebody would be happy to answer them for you, and if there's not an extra handout of this budget, I'm sure we can get you one. So the last piece is that if you want to take a positive role in this budget, you might consider writing a letter or a column or getting your friends and other parents who support this budget to write a letter to the local newspaper. So those are some ways you could help.
Absolutely. I feel that community involvement is key, also communication to the community is key. And it is my role to hopefully improve that communication process in general. However, I do want to say that I have been approached by board members that's told me that I'm supposed to be looking at the documents prior to the board meeting if I would like to review and comment on them. So I'm sort of getting conflicting information. So I'm sorry if I'm approaching the wrong process here. And I guess I'll seek out clarification from central office on
I can't speak for other people, but I've just told you how, you know, at this board, things I would like them to run, and I hope you can find the information that you need in a timely manner.
Sure.
So thank you.
An extra copy of the amended agenda by chance?
I just gave it to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda.
Nope, sorry, I want public comment, thank you.
Okay, you gonna get up there?
Yeah. I gotta get up there, they can hear me here, I think.
Okay.
Talked with the superintendent today, and the teachers have a negotiating team now, which is great. And hopefully we can, both teams can get together and talk about open teacher negotiations, so hopefully that will happen. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but we need to take a look at not throwing our kids under the bus, so, again.
Well, I hope we don't throw them.
Well, figure of speech. Thank you, that's it.
All right, so we have no policies tonight. We have some finance-related items. Can I have a motion to accept the December treasurer's report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of accepting the treasurer's report? I think it's unanimous. Ray? Okay. Any questions on the budget status report? Did Jim get what he was looking for?
Probably not. What was he looking for?
Larger print.
No.
No.
Haven't had a chance to look at that yet.
Okay. Any questions on the budget status report?
I was gonna say, are we gonna do the budget,
Where is it?
In front of you.
number 2?
Oh, yes, I jumped right
It's
over
a
it.
6-point document here.
It's the 6-point document,
Type
okay.
point.
Sure, I'm sorry, we'll go back up to 2.
All right. So hopefully everybody has in front of them 3 documents. The first one is just a summary of the action we're looking forward to take place tonight, which is approval of the direct assessments. The second document is the actual assessments streams, and the back side of that you'll see various revenues that come into the SU for the different funds that they come in for, and how they get appropriated, along with there's not a lot of other revenue at the SU level, a little bit of interest revenue, and then a little bit of indirect revenue that we get for managing grants. Most everything else is fund balance that gets carried forward. Then the third document is the detail of the entire budget, soup to nuts. But if I take you back to the first document that has the colored graph on it, hopefully everybody remembers we've been having a lot of productive, detailed conversations at the local level about these direct assessments, which is largely focused on SPED, so I want to keep that for a second because I'm assuming the audit assessment has been talked about enough and everybody fully understands that. That's a statutory requirement that we have to now pay for all of your audits at the SU level so that we can prove to the state for some reason that they were done, or we can ensure to the state that they were done. We're just going to give you a direct bill. It just replaces your audit fee that you had in your budget. If you remember, I showed everybody where it just moved from one line item to the other. There is a slight inflationary increase in there with the Bonadio Group that was contracted with. That was a 3-year contract, and next year may be the last year of that, by the way. I think it is. So hopefully nobody has any questions on the audit, but I'll stop there if somebody does.
I do.
Yeah?
I was gonna bring this up at last night's budget meeting, but the meeting was canceled. I was hoping to do it in a smaller setting. You just made a statement that the second document here is the entire budget for the SU. And the bottom line for the coming year is a little over $16 million. I was quite miffed with the audit when I saw the number of 23 million as the entire budget. And I was thinking, I've just sat through 5 budget meetings, and I thought it was 16. So what we're looking at tonight, and everybody knows it, but it's the assessable portion of the budget.
It's the general fund portion of the budget.
Correct. And I would like to see, and I wonder why we don't see, the other $8 million that is in the budget. It's just because it's not part of the assessment, it is part of the budget. As you saw in the audit report, the total SU budget for last year was 23 million, but all we look at day in, day out for last year was 15.3. So can anybody enlighten me as to,
I'm sure
I've
we
heard
can.
all the reasons, but there's $8 million missing from the publicized budget here just because of the source of the funds.
Right.
And I would like to see it stated as to where it goes,
Well, you
regardless
see-
where it came from.
You see that in the spring when we actually get the actual allocation. Right now, they're just forecasted allocations. Those allocations come out middle of May.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Catherine, I believe by statute, this board has to actually authorize the application
They did.
to the state for those grants. So you
This year they
typically
will.
see that detail in the spring.
Okay. Is there any way, I understand, I've been hearing for the last 2 weeks all those types of answers, but the budget for supervisory union for fiscal year 15 is not $16 million, it's more like $25 million, ignoring the source of the funds.
If you include
Is that
all,
a fairly accurate statement?
if you include all the grants in there, total expenditures that flow through
You're
the,
saying it perfectly, that's exactly what I want to
that
say.
flow through the SU,
Go through, that's it.
is probably close to, I don't think I would say 25 million, but it's probably,
I'm just bumping up last year's number by
it's probably another 8, 9 million.
over to 16.
Yeah, so yeah, 25.
Yeah, we're at 25.
Yeah.
So I think it would be informative to everybody that one way of looking at it is we're getting a hell of a deal here. We're spending 25 million, and we only have to come up with, 40% of that as local taxpayers. So it's, I think it should be more public. That's all. Just a general comment.
I would agree.
Is there something motionable there for the future? As to, because the audit, during the audit presentation last month, I kept coming back to this page, and I'm going, 23, where does 23 come from? We're talking, that's all.
We showed that
Yeah.
last year, and I mean, we showed it, I think we can show it again. I know we can show it again, in the form of a pie chart that showed the total pie.
Yeah.
That had whatever 20 some odd million on it.
I've gone around to the various members here,
You
and
know,
everybody
it's-
says 15, 16 million.
It's, part of, that you gotta be cautious of, we all have to be careful of is, right now, if I'm to produce that number for FY15,
It's an estimate.
I'm forecasting what those grants are gonna be in the spring. And when they give you when they give you the anticipated award in the spring, it's not then final until October when the federal government sets their budget.
The audit.
So I just don't want to create a sense that there's a real number out there that we're not going to have, because it doesn't get reconciled until next October, ultimately.
If that $80 million ever evaporated because of political reasons, we'd all be scrambling to try to find it.
Well, it's been slowly evaporating.
I know it
We've
has.
talked about that for the last 2 or 3 years.
I know. In Pownell, our real rough budget right now is 4.7 million, okay? But there's the $300,000 for Title I isn't there. And I think that's something nice to know, is that there's another $300,000, we can put it in and take it out again. And that, it's like invisible.
I can get you the information.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
We just wanted somebody to say, I mean, this is okay, I don't know that we need a motion to say.
Yeah,
how
we
you
don't need
want-
a motion, we can just
Just
incorporate
how
it.
he wants to set the flow of information up, at what point in time? Are you saying when we get ready to study the budget, that you want to see that number somewhere on here at that time?
No,
I mean, I think what I did last year for the annual, or maybe, I think it was the annual reports. I lose track of when I do reports, but I
That was in
wasn't
the
comfortable
annual.
forecasting next year, so what I did was I actually put in last year's actual, so that showed you what it was. Now, that creates confusion in and of itself, because, well, why are you showing me last year when I want to know about next year, and I'm in the middle of this year, but I'll take another stab at it and
Okay.
see if I can figure out a way to make it simple.
from an oversight standpoint, like, I just picked a page and I pointed to here and it says dental for the psychologist. All that detail is in this budget here, but there's $8 million where no one's really sure where it's going. So a third of the SU budget,
Well, I don't-
2/3 of the budget, we fight over 10 cents all the time. There's $8 million that's,
I don't want the board or the public to think that nobody knows where that money's going.
oh, sure they,
You approve all those expenditures in your warrants. And actually, this goes back to some board training on how to read the account codes and what the various, account structure is for the various things, because you see all of those. You ultimately approve all of those payments. And I can produce any report to tell you on any fund what the income and expenses are on those funds. And another complicator, some of those grants are actually 18-month grants. They're not typical 12-month grants that follow your budget
Yeah,
too,
they're
so.
18 months.
You know, there's multiple levels of confusion that get brought into this conversation.
Confusion is,
Well, I do think in the annual reports, there has to be, one of the things that are required by law is the audit, one of those pages, I don't know if it's the overview for the audit. And the other thing that is typically in there is a list of the grants, but I think that's deceiving too, because they go to different places.
That's actually confusion, and we're going to pull that this year, because
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
Because it's not directly to them.
So I appreciate the conversation, but that wasn't the conversation I had about the audits that are on this document. What I'm looking for is to make sure that everybody understands that cost shifting that's taking place in your budget from a direct expense to your local boards to an expense to the SU, which is going to be passed on to you. It's still the same dollar. I just have to handle it twice. Is everybody okay with that one? So the special ed services, which is the left-hand side of that document, and that's also those that are numerically challenged. I created a picture. So, and that picture represents the percent increase of that district's special ed services from FY14 to FY15. And that numerical is at the far right hand of that set of numbers that is called percent column. So, again, Wendy's here, and we can have, you know, as extensive conversation as you want to have. I know all of the boards have had extensive conversations with the exception of North Bennington. That is, did you get my emails right? I try to keep you in the loop on that conversation we're having.
Yeah, I know there's a conversation going on.
Okay. So with the exception of North Bennington, which right now I'm carrying a high number just because there's still some negotiations that are taking place or conversations that are going on with the provider of those services. Everybody else has had extensive conversations on their special ed budgets, with the exception of Shasberry, which I'm not sure where, I don't know if they ever said yes or no to it, but I know they had a significant conversation about it. I believe every other district has agreed with those expenses and the incoming assessment, and obviously I think we have a member from every board here that can speak to it if I'm not telling the truth. So ultimately what we're looking for is approval on these two direct assessments, the audit assessment and the special ed services assessment. I would suspect after we finalize North Bennington, depending on what happens with that, we may be back to adjust that at the next month's meeting. But other than that, I'm hoping that we can move forward so I can start to finalize all the other districts' budgets and start to put those annual reports together.
So Wendy is here, Rick is here. I know many of you were at the finance committee meetings, except maybe on Monday. And if there's no questions, can we entertain a motion to accept? Do you want to accept the whole budget?
So moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna-
All right, I'll move.
So, but are we making a motion on this sheet with the blue grid, or are we
Right,
making
there's-
it on the full budget?
You've already approved the proportional assessments, so you need to approve the direct.
Direct.
So Leon's making a motion
The expenses
to,
attributed to the direct assessments.
Leon's making a motion for the expenses attributed to the direct assessments on this sheet dated whatever today is.
22nd.
So Leon made the motion, and who seconded it? Ken?
I'll second.
Cindy? Larry? Or Ken? The
I just have
discussion.
one question. On page 15, the salary for the associate director for Pownell is in there, but I can't find the salary for the associate director for Bennington. I know we're having one. The salaries for SPED and psychologists, SLPs, OTs and stuff, and nurses. What's associate director in for the Bennington?
It's on page 13. It is nearly all of 13 with the exception of the first line and the last.
Oh, the second line, salary sped?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question on the first sheet. Is there a reason we haven't totaled these? The direct assessments for special ed?
What page you on,
The very
Jim?
first page. What are the totals here?
This one?
Well, the total will be on 8.5 by 14 paper. I mean, the reason I didn't total them because everybody's usually concerned about their districts. But if you look on the 8.5 by 14, that total is $10.7 million.
For FY15.
Yep.
Thank you.
Larry?
I know it's late in the game to suggest a change to the budget, but Shasbury had an excellent presentation given by Karen Burnell on behalf of her early childhood program. And it really showed us the results that she's been able to achieve in that program and the track of that program as it continues forward.
For the specific Shaftesbury students?
Beg your pardon?
For the specific
For all
Shaftesbury students or for all students?
For all students.
Okay.
Okay. Although there were specific pieces of it that went directly to Shasbury. And I'd recommend, I think Karen has this whole program available for anybody that would like to take a look at it. And as we know, Karen's program was cut by $200,000 in our budget. I know Rick objects to the reference of being cut, but.
Yeah.
Shifted.
Shipping.
Well,
Integrate.
what I'd like to just ask is that Karen be given the opportunity to address putting back whatever elements that she needs to continue with the success of this program. It is one of our most successful programs. I think we'd be amiss not to support it in every way that we can. It received good marks with the MGT report, as we all know. It received additional good marks with the focus monitoring report. Any document you look at that's produced from the state or even on the federal level says this is a program that we should continue. And I just want to make sure that she has the opportunity to speak to it and that we consider putting back or putting in place all that she needs to be successful with.
So Larry, are you asking, I appreciate your comments, certainly as an early ed person years ago. Are you looking at this, what would be the category 353 under early childhood program on the longer sheet?
I'd again suggest that we let Karen, if she's willing, if she feels that's appropriate, address what she needs and where she needs it.
Well,
Don't we have motions on the floor?
We do have a motion on the floor to accept it, but I guess what I'm asking Larry specifically, are you specifically, I know you're talking about early ed, but are you, and I know Karen could elaborate more, but are you specifically talking about this one column that addresses the financial expenditures for early ed?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like you're asking the board to consider opening it up to increasing that.
And again, it wasn't our intention to put it before the board tonight.
Okay.
We were denied the opportunity last night to actually discuss it at the budget committee meeting, so.
Fran, is this, are you have something different, or did you?
No, she said it all, and I agree with him.
Okay, so I'm gonna call on Leon and then Karen, maybe.
Well, yeah, I don't quite understand, because we just went through a rate of things in terms of that budget, and sit down and talk about all the things that were there, that we missed this, that just now came about with Shasberry, is what I want to know, because we had a lethargic method of going through the budget and asking for it to be displayed, so we can make a decision before we get to this point to start putting things and questioning things coming back. So I don't understand that, and that's what,
Well, again, Leon, it wasn't our intention to do it this evening. It's the only opportunity we have because no one showed up at the meeting last night where we may have been more effective at introducing.
So I'm going to have Rick.
Yeah, I don't have a problem having this conversation. It's outside of the motion and what we're looking for. And if we can just, I don't want people to get confused in what we're trying to accomplish. So if we can continue down the conversation of the motion and then have that conversation, because, you know, my interpretation is they're asking to reopen a proportional assessment that's already been approved, which is different than what we've got on the table.
So Larry, would you agree that this is outside of this motion?
Yes.
Okay. So is there any germane comments on just this particular direct assessment, and then we'll go back?
Yes.
Ray?
So this is a motion that includes a piece for special ed services, which is a contingent motion because it's contingent upon the individual boards approving it from the districts. But the motion, the part of it that deals with the audit is not contingent in that way.
I would argue that the only contingent one is really North Bennington. All the other boards have, unless someone's changed their mind at a meeting I haven't been at, has agreed to their special ed costs, with a slight caveat that I'm not sure Shasberry ever said yes or no.
No.
There was significant discussion, I'm not sure where they ever landed, so maybe 1.5, or if these guys are saying no, so then definitely 2. But, you know, as everyone experienced last year, as difficult as it is, and as cumbersome as it is, and sometimes as confusing as it is, you know, you could come back next month, you can come back up until June 30th and change these numbers if your board finds reason to do those. The difficulty is we need to start to put some numbers in place for warning of an annual meeting and for warning of the local budgets. What I would expect with North Bennington would be, and it sounds like Shasberry, would be we would have this number in place. You're going to have, I know, 1 more meeting of both and possibly 2 more meetings of both. And if we can nail down a number at that point, I will then include that into your annual report in your budget, and then it would be ratified at the next SU meeting.
I just want to note it that this number isn't set in stone. For my district sounds like Shasberry's was.
Avis?
If we do not get these items approved in time to get them on our annual meeting, but yet we have until June to adjust them, would that then not mean that at least the districts that were involved in an adjustment would have to call a special meeting of the voters to revise the budget?
Good correction, or good catch. The adjustments from here to June can be down. If they're going to go up, then we would have to have special meetings.
Yeah.
But right now, I've got high placeholders in here for these, and, you know, if we can't come to a resolution tonight, that'll have to be carried into the annual reports and move forward. I know, with the exception of North Bennington, and I think North Bennington is going to be solved probably on Thursday. At least I hope it will, or tomorrow. I guess tomorrow is Thursday. Shasberry's also meeting tomorrow. I don't know where they're going. But, North Bennington, I think we'll have a good conversation on Thursday, and we should be able to resolve that issue.
So, there's a motion on the floor still for these direct assessments. Is there any other discussion on the direct assessments? All in favor of the motion for the direct assessments made by Leon, seconded by Cindy? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opposed. 1, 2, 3. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Yeah, no question is dumb.
If that motion had failed, where would that have put us?
If that motion had failed, you'd probably be having a special meeting next week. I'd probably have to,
more discussion tonight.
I mean, depending on why it failed, if it failed, may have to call special meetings of all the boards to make adjustments to their budgets, and then have another special SU meeting next week.
So, town meeting day, what's the warning period before?
I've got to warn by the end of January. Technically, I think I got till February 2nd.
February 2nd.
February 2nd. So
But
we
in
have,
all practicality, next Friday
so we'd have 9 days to keep work.
to shuffle.
Well, it passes. It's a moot question.
Okay. Larry, did you want to bring something up again?
Only what I've just spoken to, Sean. If it's appropriate, then we address it.
Well, I guess what I'd like to do is there a seat next to you, Rick?
Oh, I can create a seat.
Switch with Karen.
One here.
Okay. Karen, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
But you are.
I guess Larry put you on the spot.
He's just
So I guess what I would ask you in a direct fashion is, do you feel that there's enough money allocated in early ed for your programs and to continue the good work that you're doing in your programs in this SU budget?
It's hard being on the spot. Before I answer your question, could I give a 2-minute explanation of where the how the $200,000 kind of dispersed into grants to help the board understand a little bit?
Well, I guess that's what I'm
happened?
asking
Is
you,
that-
because if you
okay.
answered yes, and the money is here, here, and here, that would be
Okay.
one way, or you could say the money's here, here, and here, and then answer the question.
Speak up
Oh, I will.
a little bit louder.
So of the $209,000 that was cut from the budget, about $130,000 of that was shifted into grants, so that we were able to maintain the level of staffing that we feel that we need for the program. Now, we all know that the grants are somewhat vulnerable, but we were willing to take that risk, and it seems as though the boards and the administration are very committed to young children and the quality of their programs, so I'm having confidence that they would remain in those grants. So that $130,000 is in those grants.
I'm going to stop you for a second. Mm-hmm. The 100, you say 130 or 139?
130.
So when you talk about grants, there are different kinds of grants. There's competitive grants, there's entitlement grants, there's grants we've gotten because of our poverty. So can you be... Philanthropic grants. So I think it may help people understand the situation if you could identify what kinds of grants you shifted it to. It's not like you're going to apply for a grant that you've never applied for, right?
Right, it would be primarily, we looked at Title I as one resource, and we looked at IEP Medicaid as the other resource.
Okay, so
So
with
those are the
IEP Medicaid, I just, because not everyone remembers, the Medicaid money comes from the schools, comes to the SU, and then the SU allocates it to where they believe it should go. It doesn't actually come back to, right?
Right, but it's very restrictive money.
It's
I
for
know, but I'm just saying,
prevention.
so,
It's to prevent special ed.
It's
Right.
prevention
So
money.
the way we can use it is very limited, and one of the good things is on early intervention.
right, so I'm saying that when you talk about grants and, when you apply or, somebody goes for a scholarship grant, you're one in millions that are applying for that. And I just want the board to understand what kind of grants and what the expectation is of the grants where you shifted it to. Because I think Larry has a legitimate concern, but I also want your professional input on the track record for these previous grants.
Right,
Okay, so that's the
Right.
130. Next.
right. The remaining money, which is about $70,000, will take some belt tightening and some careful expenditures of that money. We are vulnerable in a couple of areas that arose after the budget was determined. One of which was an employee who changed their mind about retirement, and we had budgeted the retirement, so we had lowered the salary in the budget. And the other is the complex needs of children and the consultation services for those children. Those were new expenses that we became aware of after the budget had been decided. So that makes me a little nervous that we have $26,000 to absorb in the budget that we weren't expecting to absorb. We did cut our transportation sizably. That is a cut that we made. We hope that it will meet the needs of the children and the families. If we get someone who lives out in a more rural area, it could create a problem because those children typically have to be transported in a single transport vehicle at a separate expense than the bus.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions for Karen?
Well, yeah, I'm looking, and I hate to be saying this because, one, I hear what you're saying, but I can't see it. Because anytime we're gonna make some changes like that, we need to look at the total picture of what you got in terms of your budget and where this stuff needs to go. And so, if we're gonna entertain this, like we did before, when you came before SVSU and said, what, all the things that you have encompassed in your budget, what are the number of personnel, the people, and the services that you need to offer, and whether you were able to do that. And I think we specifically asked why your budget went down, because we didn't know, as much as we needed to know about what was in there. And so I need to see a breakout of all these things that you're talking about. We start looking at how many minutes and hours went to certain students and so forth on that. But to understand this and make sure these things don't happen, we gotta have a total breakout.
Well, I think, I'm certainly not going to speak for Larry, but it sounded like his concern came out of a conversation that was had about making sure that we have enough money in the early ed where we do have significant outcomes for the money spent. And I appreciate what Larry's brought up. I also, aside from perhaps that 26,000, I'm pretty confident that that money that was shifted, I don't think our poverty is going to change that much. I don't think the Medicaid is going to be absorbed into other. So I do think that the money, even though it seems like a cut, it sounds like a cut, it's the services that were provided in that 200,000 are still in the budget. They're just expecting the money to come outside of what we see here on the paper. Is that a fair way to say it?
Right, that's fair.
So if we use what I said a while ago, we showed the whole 24 million.
Right, right.
It would be there. It would be, 800,000
Right.
from property taxes and 200,000 from other.
Rick?
And then Ray.
I'm not advocating for or against this, I just want to make sure the facts are understood.
Uh-huh.
That if you look on page 15, at the very bottom, total ECS is going down $2,220. You take into account 130, 139.
Page one.
31 grand.
15,
130 went to grants.
26.
Did you mean page?
I'm sorry, page 27.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's page 27.
Yeah, I was wondering where you were.
I was gonna say it's not
So you take into account the 130 that was placed in grants, her expenditures are actually going up $128,000.
Aha.
Now, again, I'm not advocating for or against
No, I
what
think,
you do, I just want everyone to understand.
Ray, I see your hand up. I just, the
Yeah,
point
sorry.
going back to, these are not the total expenditures. This is the net of the total expenditures. Ray?
Well, this goes back to Jim's point earlier,
Yeah.
in effect. So my question is, if the expenses that were cut are going into the grants, why are we having this conversation?
Right. I didn't bring it up.
I'm not directing that to you, actually.
Trying to understand.
Just looking at me.
Stan, it's not.
No, I'm not even looking at you, I'm looking in that
26 is
direction.
Okay.
outstanding, and she doesn't know where the transportation is.
Can I
So
ask-
it sounds like in just reviewing the early ed line item, that there's 26,000 that's a little uncertain, and there's some transportation
Concern.
concerns. So and I know that every department had to really take a look at where they could tighten things. So, Larry, did you want to do more than bring it up? I mean, are you looking for a motion, or you?
It'd be the pleasure of the board. I think Karen's done a good job of representing herself in her programs, and I'm still of the opinion that deserves our support. And, our Shasberry board was unanimous in giving that support as well.
I think we're okay.
I think the vague area is how much support are we actually offering or considering. And again, I don't think any of us could be prepared as well as Karen is to identify what that is. And we need to put her on the spot, but unfortunately, that's what it takes. So if she's content that she's made her case and the board has listened to it and can decide what action they care to take on it.
So, Jim?
I would like to ask Rick a simple question about the budget.
Oh, you don't ask simple.
No, it's a simple question. If Karen has an unanticipated, totally legitimate spike in expenses, don't you come to at the end of the year and take it out of someplace else if someone else was less? And if she has it's gonna get paid. If she has a legitimate need,
Oh, yeah.
it's gonna get met.
Is there a
And we'll figure it out.
contingency?
Correct.
Yeah.
There's no
Is there a
contingency, we lost all the contingency.
Okay, I'm just,
Yes, Jim.
No need is gonna go unmet.
If a high-needs child ends up in Shasberry Hollow somewhere, and we gotta send a Suburban up there to get him every day. Yeah, we'll take care of the kid. Sean Marie mentioned the Medicaid. I mean, we now have, maybe 2, 3, maybe a month ago, we just hired our second Medicaid clerk back in. So,
she was on the consent agenda.
those of you that know me, I'm fairly conservative in my budgeting, and,
We should.
I was conservative in our Medicaid revenue because we were without a Medicaid clerk for a while, and that generates cash. And now that we've got it, I'm hoping that that individual can get up to speed and start generating cash.
And she's in training right now.
That will be available for some of those unforeseen needs, but that's just a guess on my part. I wasn't willing to budget it, but, I'm sure there'll be some resources there.
All right. So, is everybody comfortable moving on? Okay. So the next item on the agenda is D, which is the proposed lease, which is still partially an executive session item. And I was wondering if somebody could make a motion to authorize the CFO and the district's attorney to finalize the lease agreement for the early ed program. And when it's finalized, have the SVSU Board chair sign the agreement.
So moved.
Second.
You want to pass Richard this posted if you didn't get it?
Ken?
Any discussion? All in favor? I think it's unanimous. It's unanimous. The next item is the attorney contract proposal that was in your packet, or was actually posted on Monday. Monday, the holiday. It arrived late Friday, and I had Lisa post it on Monday. I had her post both the 2007-8 year one, which was 7 to 10, and then the proposed one, so you could see side by side the difference in the owners and the clients, as well as I just want to point out that the negotiated rate for negotiations is a separate category in the budget and a separate dollar amount and agreement outside of the regular attorney contract. The negotiations contract is different from that. So can I is there any discussion? Is there a motion to be had for the proposed contract? Ray?
Just a point of information. Are the rates changing?
The rates for...
I had it, I looked at it briefly and then lost it, so I haven't looked at it again.
The rates for the main attorneys, then the however they break them up, the associates, and what are the owners called?
Partners.
Partners, thank you.
Partners.
So those rates are one rate, then another rate. They're the same as they were proposed in 2008.
Because the minutes from last month say that's what we agreed to
Right.
informally around the table.
And then the negotiated agreement last year was actually less for the negotiations. Since more time was involved, was I would say significant. It was a lesser amount per hour, which I don't think that's actually been discussed, right? Rick or Catherine?
The hour for the negotiations?
The attorney for the negotiations.
No, it's not. It's still
Okay.
in discussion.
Okay. So does that answer your question, Ray?
Yep, thank you.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the name is Dixel Page.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, Rick?
Is it through any time, or just this year, or 2 years?
Oh, no, it's in the contract. It's backdated to July 1st, 2013 through FY16. It's a 3-year contract. And it's on the web. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1, 2. Abstentions? 1. Okay. Thank you. I guess, I'm not sure whose signature they want on it, so. Oh, I think the original is here. The next is the consent agenda, and that is there's an amended consent agenda. And included in that, we're removing the maintenance foreman job description. And also on the new consent agenda, on the resignations, the new resignations, we're accepting the resignation and the compensation requested in the letter that will be looked at and decided at a later time to come before this board. So Richard, the change would be the removal of the maintenance foreman and the note about the 4B resignation.
I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda with the amended.
I'll second that.
That's
Or
Cindy.
B and C, right?
Excuse me?
B and C.
No, I don't think, was there any, there was in there one too?
Yep.
So B and C, yes. I thought that was a separate letter.
Who's the separate person, so separate letter?
No, I'm looking at Joy. The second, the C, there was two letters, and we are only accepting the one.
For,
Yes, so
Yes.
B is the note about the compensation,
correct.
and C is,
Separate letters.
it's a separate letter, so we don't need a note on C.
Correct.
And it is actually with regret that I will say we are losing 3 longtime teachers throughout the SVSU district, and certainly Marie has put in
20 years?
20-something years, I'm not sure how many,
20.
in many capacities, and she has done an incredible job moving from Corby Whitney as Bob Marcoux's secretary. Was that what we used to call them back then?
Secretaries.
Up to Monument and here and there, and she's been in a lot of different places, and she has amazing institutional memory on what has happened here, so I wish her all the best in her next endeavor as well. So, and I'm very disappointed that we're going to lose Danielle. I know she's really a good, wonderful find, so anyway, so that's the consent agenda.
Well, I'm very disappointed.
But all of it,
Particularly my loss.
yes.
Lori Linger.
Oh, on that resignation, well, she's only moving down the hall.
I know. It'll be tough.
Lori Linger for the audience. If you-
I'm sorry I didn't mention her because I'm pleased that she's moving up or
No, it's
into a
promotion.
different,
It is a promotion.
into a new position, so. Jim,
I'd like to make a comment on the nomination portion of the consent agenda. Is that appropriate?
on the what?
Nominations.
Yes.
Okay. This is for Joy. The nomination form, she has a lot to work on, but one thing is the nomination form. There's a point down there, nomination forms come before the board on a monthly basis, and the line for salary is not in any standardized format. It's per year, per month, I mean, so I would ask that we might want to look at, regardless if it's the superintendent or the janitor, it be stated on a actual per hourly basis, okay? Because on the 5 nominations that we're looking at today, the per hours go from, $14 to $30 or $40 an hour. And at first glance, just on the relative importance of the job and the cost of the job.
So it's interesting because I actually brought that up to Joy. One I noticed is a prorated amount, the other has the actual dollar amount.
It's a mess.
And I think that Joy is well aware, but I'm not sure you want to reduce it all the way down to,
I would love to know, as far as to help the negotiators here, it's, I think, to see what people actually make per hour. Because the entire central office staff is here tonight, putting in a lot more hours than shows on those forms, okay?
well, and the thing is, Jim, is that, sometimes when you have a salaried position, you can't really do it like that because people do.
No, it's just 2080, I mean, it's just, so that they're all 2080.
So you come to the personnel committee and
Okay,
you give
thank you.
all your input there.
All
We'll
right,
would
thank
love
you.
to have it.
I just don't like the form, thank you.
I agree. We're going to get all new forms.
Good.
The consent agenda is, the motion and second's been made, we've amended it, discussed it, comment on it. Is there anything else? All in favor? Okay. Opposed? Fran, that's one. Abstention? Okay. Motion passed. So now we're moving on to the superintendent's report.
I would ask those board members who attended the legislative breakfast if you wish to share your reflections of that morning. You're certainly welcome to. But we were able to meet with 3 of our legislators on the morning of the 20th for our legislative breakfast. I will note right at this moment, we will be returning to our regular schedule, which is the first Monday of the month, beginning in February, so it'll be February 3rd for the next legislative breakfast. And we're hoping that going back to that regular schedule, we'll be able... Same time, 7:45 in the morning. But we covered many, many topics. School funding, of course, was a major topic, as were services for students through where the limitation of services available to students with autism through Medicaid reimbursement, something that Karen's been following in the legislature and is hoping will gain some better understanding and some momentum to actually open that funding for these students at their homes, services at homes. And also, we covered other topics that were of note. One was just a comment about the reports that came excuse me, through the study group that was assigned by the legislature, was called for by the legislature to study the movement of public schools into private and the way that that process for the committee work itself had been, actually it needed more attention. That the charge was fairly clear, but the process of how the committee was to work was not, and it's pretty evident in those reports. And I know that people will be following that topic through the legislation. So I think school funding really ended up to be a majority of that. I know that some board members, Larry, I think you brought up the reoccurring proposed legislation regarding in-state services on that continuum of special education services that students would be able to access, that Ann Muck had started about a year ago, I believe. So there was a little bit of discussion about that. It was the in-state services to make sure that we had a continuum, that students were being referred to in-state facilities before out-of-state facilities for residential and day placements. So there was a discussion about that too. Let's see, Fran was there, Larry was there. Trying to remember who else.
Joy?
Yeah, George was there. I'm sorry, George, you weren't there.
It was.
So I think it was a good discussion. We were disappointed that other legislators couldn't join us, but we will be back to our regular schedule Monday, February 3rd. Also, I would like to note that the UCS annual legislative breakfast is Monday. Some of you have received invitations, and I encourage you to attend that as well. Hoping that topic that we discussed at ours at least twice this year already regarding the needed supports for families and students with mental health issues in the community is really a topic of great concern, the lack of those supports. So we're hoping that that becomes a topic on that Monday. I also want to bring attention to a presentation that's planned for February 10th. This is a presentation that will be in the first hour of the Bennington Select Board meeting on February 10th. So it involves the boards of districts that have Bennington students attending. So it's BSD, MAU, CDC, and then SVSU budget will be part of that, but the idea there is really to combine with the CDC and present highlights of program, go over school funding, and then present the proposed budgets. There'll also be another segment of that presentation where the town will be looking at the impacts on their proposed FY15 budgets and going through those budgets. So as you're following the Bennington budget warnings, annual meetings, and ballot votes, you may want to catch that. CAT TV will be taping and it will be played. We also have some radio spots that all districts can join me to present to the community on WBTN on Monday. I have SVSU The View from 1 o'clock to 1:30, so if any of the districts wish to come with me on that show to talk about their proposed budget. We will have 2 sessions on a Tuesday show called News and Views, which will focus again on school funding and the Bennington budgets, and then the second one I'll have principals on throughout the SU with some directors to talk about budgeting. So those are the radio shows upcoming, and I think that's...
What time is the presentation on February 10th?
I believe it's 6 o'clock at the firehouse on February 10th.
Thank you, Catherine. Any questions of Catherine? So I am going to the electronic agenda.
Yeah, and
So one of the things that I had asked to get on here, and I guess in the back and forth, is I was going to ask the SVSU Board to think about the structure that we put in place a year ago. It was a year ago right now that the state board approved the smaller board.
a waiver.
And so next month will be a year, because in March is when we started with the new 2-person reps with 1 alternate. And I just, if you think this is a good idea, if it's working well, I'll bring that message back upstate. They're always looking for ways to make things more efficient. My feeling about changing the size of this board from 18 to 12 really had nothing to do with the size itself, but the quorum. And as human nature will have it, the minute we went to 2 members from each board, everybody shows up. It seems we never have a problem, except for a finance committee, that we didn't have a quorum. So in some ways, I missed the representation from more people, but at the same time, the reason we did it was so we could be more efficient and that people would come, and it seemed to certainly do that. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's a year next month. And then we wanted to clarify about the electronic agendas. So even though the packets are electronic, people were getting a paper agenda in the mail, and we'd like to try and not send the paper copy in the mail, except for those that still get paper packets. Is that okay with people? I know some people get faxed, some people get it mailed, but if you get it electronically, you will no longer get a copy in the mail.
Just the agenda.
You won't, right. People were getting just the agenda as a reminder. So we'd like to now, if you get a paper packet, you'll still get a paper packet. But if you only get the agenda, you will no longer get the agenda.
We'll get an
No
email
one will
from
get-
Mary.
You'll get the email just like you do that is posted.
That makes much more sense.
So along that line, I wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to have access to be able to pull up all those documents. So the effectiveness of the system in terms of the electronic process needs to be looked at to make sure that when these things go out, all of the things that we want to have people see and click on for the blue line and then go to the next one, that they're capable of getting to those things. And so that may involve some special efforts of some services from the central office to make sure that the computers that everybody have, the ones that we gave them, they're using are able to get that, and they may want to request that. Some right now, when I'm here at home, I can pull up everything, and then when I'm in here, I can't get my attachments. I don't
Right.
understand it. So it's things
It is
like that
frustrating.
that we need to have looked at and resolved if we're gonna be really effective in the electronic area.
So I think many of you know it's very frustrating to not be able to get in. Here, you usually can get in just to SVSU, but I know that we were supposed to be looking at, I mean, there's different levels of security on all the different click-ons. Do you guys get on your iPads back there? Usually?
But I don't use any internal Wi-Fi. I use the my own 3G.
Okay, so
And I use internal Wi-Fi.
you do? Yeah, I do too. Okay.
So
Catherine?
I also wanted to note that I'll be working with our technology department about the actual postings because they're still difficult to follow when you get into those attachments because the agenda is in the center of some of the attachments. So it's not sequential to the agenda, and I know that people would prefer to have that, so we'll be working on that as well.
Well, the easiest thing to do would be number them then. So,
Can we hear back then when something like that's gonna do what, when, what?
Yes, good point.
so, any other business to come before this board? Then I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session, and you have another?
Well, you got FYI, but I had a question on the student enrollment breakout.
Okay.
It seems to me that I see all of the places where all of the kids go, except when it comes to the high school. If there are people, and maybe I'm missing that, if
It's
they're
on the
not
second page.
actually at the high school, and they're doing some other kind of program, shouldn't they be showing up on there?
Do you mean our students that are in high school, public school choice, where they're attending?
Well,
If they're in Arlington or Trinity Valley?
we live for different programs, all the way up to grade 6, or 7 and 8, where.
I think on the second page it's on other, it says there's a
And that's
place.
the one I can't open up in here. But, and then when it comes to the high school, if there are students that go to the high school, and for some reason they may be at the tutorial center doing something, or they may be taking something somewhere else for other reasons than being at the high school, should they be listed on the
What's your
site?
foreign exchange? Actually not, because students that are in programs at the tutorial center are actually discharged from Mount Anthony.
They're not enrolled in
They're not
Mount.
I'm just using that as an example.
Yes.
Isn't there some
So-
others out there that, I mean, if every student that enrolled in.
So if there's somebody in Arlington,
It's not on.
No, they all,
if somebody's in Arlington for school choice, we count them in our count. Are they under other?
They're not on that sheet.
They're not on that sheet, but we
That's-
still count them.
That could be one that
Right?
they're looking for.
and what if we have a problem with some students in high school who decide to send them off somewhere?
They're on here under
They on
the
there on that one?
special education.
Those might be another, I mean, there's multiple.
It's one column that said all others, and I'm wondering why.
So it says
Well, that's all
enrolled
others.
students served elsewhere.
I saw it said all the students served elsewhere, and that's only 9 students out of the high school.
Well, and,
You have high school students that are at Sunrise.
yeah.
I'm just trying to find out where we got.
We have
Well-
one or two in Arlington.
And Leon, a lot of times, and we're still looking at this distribution chart of students, because if a student is at a location like that, sometimes it's been a prescribed location, and then if you actually disaggregate them out, you're identifying which the students are.
I think
People
if
know
that's the case
who the
there, I
students
just wanted to
are.
make, I mean, it may be
Yeah.
in that all other
But we'll take a look
categories,
at it. Let's
but
take a look at
seemed
it.
that number was low.
Because school choice should be in there, but it's a stable home.
Well, but we count them, so they should be.
Yeah, but they should.
All right, a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel.
So moved.
We're going, all in favor? We're going
Boston had
to the
that.
conference room.
When he came here to